Hey everyone, welcome back to Universal Manhwa. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a recap. Let's jump into the action. Now, back to the story. At the edge of a dense forest, a confrontation unfolded between Suho and Lee Min-sung. The tension was palpable as the two stared each other down. Suho, calm and composed, projected an air of unshakable confidence. His voice, cold and cutting, demanded answers from Min-sung. It would be in your best interest to tell me what I want to know. His piercing, icy blue eyes locked onto Min-sung, exuding an intimidating intensity. Lee Min-sung, however, was far from composed. Internally, his mind was racing. Questions filled his thoughts. Who is this guy? How does he know about the Stardust? And worse, how does he know about the Apostle? The realization that Suho possessed knowledge of both the elusive substance and the alien entity filled him with unease. Min-sung's attention shifted to Suho's Vulcan gauntlets, their faint gleam catching his eye in the dim forest light. A sudden realization struck him. Wasn't there a rumor about someone who defeated Brokey and disrupted the Stardust supply chain? That person wore a black mask. Could it really be Suho? Sweat began to bead on Min-sung's forehead as his unease deepened. He scanned his surroundings, formulating a plan. He knew time was running out. If he stayed, the hunters would catch up to him. With a resolve born of desperation, he gripped his sword and swung it with all his strength, aiming directly at Suho. His confidence was bolstered by his assessment of Suho's magic power, which he deemed inferior. Charging forward with a yell of "Die, you weakling!" Min-sung attacked with full force. Yet, Suho remained unfazed. As the blade sliced through the air toward him, Suho moved with mechanical precision. With a slight tilt of his body, he caught the sword barehanded, stopping the attack dead in its tracks. The sound of screeching metal echoed ominously through the forest. Lee Min-sung froze, his eyes wide in disbelief. Panic crept into his mind as he struggled to comprehend what had just happened. How did he stop my attack with his hand? He tried to pull his sword free, but it wouldn't budge. Anxiety surged as he realized, just how strong is this guy? Before Min-sung could recover, Suho counterattacked. Twisting his body with practiced ease, Suho delivered a devastating sweet chin music kick to Min-sung's jaw. The impact was brutal, sending Min-sung flying through the air. Blood sprayed from his mouth as his vision blurred, and he crashed to the ground, dazed and disoriented. His thoughts spiraled in confusion. He has less magic power than me, so how is he overpowering me like this? From the shadows, Baru observed the scene with amusement. He mused on Min-sung's confusion, recognizing the flaw in the hunter's mindset. Hunters often judge strength solely by magic power, but true strength is far more complex. Suho's power transcends anything an A-rank hunter like Min-sung could understand. Baru continued to reflect on Suho's growth, noting how his strength had increased dramatically through intense training with Amit. Suho's raw physical power now far exceeded the capabilities of any A-rank hunter. Meanwhile, Suho's relentless assault overwhelmed Min-sung, who found himself barely able to defend against the barrage. With each exchange, his confidence eroded further, replaced by growing desperation. As the fierce battle in the forest unfolded, the narrative abruptly shifted to the Payu Field dungeon. Chaos reigned as Miho stood injured, clutching her arm. Before her loomed the Apostle, an alien entity exuding an ominous presence. Miho's voice trembled as she spoke, her disbelief evident. "Hunter Park, how are you still alive?" That attack, it pierced straight through your heart. The Apostle's expression remained unreadable. In eerie silence, he conjured a glowing stardust crystal, its malevolent energy radiating from his hand. His intent was clear. He aimed to dominate Miho using the power of the stardust. His gaze burned with malice as he prepared to strike. Before he could act, a voice rang out, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Miho, what's going on here?" Startled, Miho turned, her heart racing. She saw someone approaching, their presence offering a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. The Apostle, caught off guard, widened his eyes in shock. He hadn't expected an interruption, let alone at such a critical moment. Miho tilted her head upward, her gaze locked on the hole above, and a relieved smile spread across her face. "You arrived just in time, Hunter Choi Jong and Hunter Im Taiju," she said warmly. At the edge of the opening, the two towering S-rank hunters stood side by side, their imposing silhouettes framed by the faint light. Their sharp eyes scanned the scene below, Miho, battered and bruised, surrounded by injured hunters. Nearby, The apostle stood silently, his glowing yellow eyes narrowing as he assessed the newcomers. His thoughts churned. Two S-rank hunters. He mused darkly. For now, I'll keep my head down. No need to invite suspicion. Hunter Choi leapt gracefully into the hole, his landing fluid and precise, a testament to his unparalleled skill. Approaching Miho, his face was etched with concern. We rushed here as soon as we heard the explosion, Choi said, his voice steady but serious. What happened here? Miho's expression grew tense, her smile fading. She replied grimly, this was Lee Min-sung's doing. Choi's eyebrows rose in disbelief. Lee Min-sung? Are you saying an A-rank hunter caused all this? Miho nodded, unease coloring her voice. He wasn't himself. His behavior was overwhelming, almost unnatural, like he'd consumed some sort of stimulant. Maybe the drug's effects pushed him beyond his limits, but she hesitated, her tone lowering. He also attacked Hunter Park Dojin. Choi's expression shifted to one of shock as his gaze fell on the apostle, who stood silently nearby. His eyes narrowed slightly. Wait, but Hunter Park seems fine, he muttered, perplexed by the apostle's composed demeanor despite Miho's statement. A sly grin tugged at the apostle's lips as he replied smoothly, I have an excellent recovery skill. It's nothing extraordinary. Choi stepped closer, studying him with keen interest. Stroking his chin, he murmured thoughtfully, interesting. That's quite an advanced recovery ability. Before Choi could say more, Miho's patience snapped. Her voice rang out sharply, cutting through the moment. Enough of this. We don't have time to waste. Lee Min-sung is still out there. If we don't act now, he'll reach the city and disappear. Acknowledging the urgency, Choi nodded briskly. You're right. He turned his head upward and called out, Hunter Taiju. You heard that, didn't you? His tone carried a sharp edge as he added, It seems Lee Min-sung has caused quite the commotion, just as we suspected. But as Choi glanced over his shoulder, he froze. Taiju was nowhere to be seen. Frustration rippled through him as he clenched his jaw. Don't tell me he went after Min-sung on his own, Choi thought bitterly. Meanwhile, the apostle's glowing yellow eyes flashed as a sinister realization dawned. This is bad, he thought. My link with Lee Min-sung hasn't been severed. How is he resisting my control? Unease crept into his mind as he mused darkly. Human desires. Always so unpredictable. As Choi and Miho prepared to pursue Min-sung, the apostle weighed his options. It's unlikely anyone would believe what Min-sung says, but staying idle could draw suspicion. Closing his eyes, the apostle channeled his energy, attempting to re-establish his mental link with Min-sung. If it comes to this, I'll discard him, he decided coldly. It'll cost me a significant amount of divinity, but I can take over his body and force him to end his own life. He's only an A-rank hunter. I'll find another pawn soon enough. As he focused, his vision blurred, and he suddenly found himself seeing through Lee Min-sung's eyes. His breath hitched at the sight before him. What is this? He thought, alarmed. Is he fighting right now? The apostle's heart sank as he concentrated on the scene. Min-sung was engaged in a fierce battle. His jaw tightened as realization struck. Don't tell me he's already crossed paths with an S-rank hunter. His vision sharpened, revealing the figure attacking Min-sung. It was Suho. His movements were sharp, relentless, and precise, overwhelming Min-sung with devastating efficiency. The sight of Suho, his black mask concealing his face and his merciless precision, stirred unease within the apostle. Narrowing his glowing eyes, he thought, what is the black mask doing here? Could he be after Lee Min-sung too, just like the Hunter Association? The apostle's fists clenched beneath the folds of his jacket as his thoughts spiraled. I never imagined I'd encounter the black mask so soon. Nothing has gone according to plan since arriving in this world. Pulling his collar up as though to shield his thoughts, he muttered bitterly to himself, this is nothing like the days when everything unfolded as per the word of God. Then, a strange shift occurred within him. A devilish grin spread across his face, the earlier tension melting into chilling excitement. But why am I smiling? He wondered. The grin widened. This is exhilarating. Meanwhile, Suho's assault on Lee Min-sung continued, the flurry of swift, precise strikes forcing Min-sung to barely hold his ground. Desperation flared in Min-sung's eyes as he gritted his teeth. I can't let him keep me here any longer, he thought frantically. Suddenly, Min-sung shouted, wait! His cry cut through the chaos, momentarily halting Suho's relentless attacks. Suho's eyes narrowed in suspicion as he stopped mid-strike. What? He asked sharply, surprise flickering in his tone. Min-sung's demeanor shifted, his voice now calm and deliberate. If I answer your questions, is there any chance you'll let me go? Suho blinked, taken aback by the unexpected request. What are you suddenly talking about? He demanded, his tone laced with suspicion. Weren't you working with the Iterum Apostle? Lee Min-sung's crimson eyes blazed with fury as his clenched jaw trembled. That alien betrayed me, he spat venomously. Suho and Baru, hidden in the shadows, exchanged glances, startled by the revelation. Suho's thoughts raced. He was backstabbed? Did something go wrong between them? Steeling himself, Suho pressed forward, his tone firm. Then why are you helping him distribute stardust? Lowering his sword, Lee Min-sung balled his fists, his frustration palpable as he admitted, because he promised to kill someone for me. The confession struck Suho like a thunderbolt, disbelief etched across his face. You worked with the Apostle just so he'd kill someone for you? He asked, incredulous. Lee Min-sung's gesture was sharp, his voice steady but filled with bitterness. After the Great Cataclysm, everything I'd built was destroyed. My entire life flipped upside down. A nobody, became an S-rank hunter and had the audacity to look down on me. His expression twisted with resentment. To live as myself, there was someone I had to eliminate. And weren't you also chasing that alien? Didn't you want him dead too? Suho froze, his steady demeanor shaken. No, he said firmly, his tone resolute. I don't intend to kill him. Not if we can resolve this with words. A sinister smirk spread across Lee Min-sung's face. You don't plan to kill him? Even though that alien is here to invade our world. His voice dripped with mockery. You remind me of a character I despised back in my acting days. Suddenly, something dark and oppressive emanated from Lee Min-sung. Drawing on the Apostle's lingering influence, a sinister aura enveloped him. His grin turned devilish as he sneered. A character full of hope, but no substance. Honestly, you don't even know what you want. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, suffocating and unrelenting, as his glowing red eyes burned brighter. If you hadn't stumbled into power by sheer luck, you'd still be living as an insignificant extra, he hissed. Mark my words, one day you'll face a moment where you'll have to make a choice that defines you. His laughter echoed darkly through the forest. I'll create that moment for you. Before he could utter another word, his body froze. His words choked off mid-sentence, his expression contorting unnaturally. From the shadows, the Apostle seized control of Lee Min-sung's body. In an instant, Lee Min-sung's consciousness was dragged into a dark, otherworldly void. The Apostle's towering figure loomed above him, a predator casting an overwhelming shadow. Pinching Lee Min-sung between spectral fingers like an insect, the Apostle's voice rang out cold and mocking. Lee Min-sung, I won't let you say another word. The Apostle's grin deepened, dripping with mockery. I must admit, you've been far more useful than I anticipated. Thanks to you, I've gained so much. His tone turned sinister as he added, I'll take back what I said about you being incompetent. But now, he leaned closer, molten gold eyes gleaming with malice. I'll use your body one final time. Lee Min-sung's eyes widened in terror as he yelled, his voice cracking. No, I won't let you. The Apostle's spectral hands clapped together with an ominous force, like a thunderclap shattering the void. In the real world, Lee Min-sung's body began to glow ominously. Waves of energy erupted outward, shaking the forest violently. Debris flew in all directions as Suho shielded his eyes, bracing against the storm of power. What is this? Suho muttered, his voice barely audible over the roaring energy. From the shadows, Baru's voice cut through the chaos, grim and urgent. This is Iterum energy, and it's far more powerful than anything we faced with Brokey. Lee Min-sung's body convulsed violently as he let out a blood-curdling scream. His frame was consumed by a brilliant yellow glow, the monstrous energy reshaping him. His sword fused with his body, radiating an unearthly light. From his back, radiant yellow wings emerged, spreading wide and shimmering with overwhelming Iterum energy. The transformation was both horrifying and divine, a grotesque display of power that defied human comprehension. Suho stood frozen, his mind reeling as he tried to process the drastic change before him. What just happened? He thought, his body rooted to the spot as the sheer intensity of the transformation weighed down the air. Lee Min-sung's form was no longer his own. It had become a vessel for the Apostle's will. The grotesquely divine figure radiated an aura so potent it seemed to warp reality itself. With unnerving calm, the Apostle's voice boomed from Lee Min-sung's transformed body. I see. the attack on the Stardust Factory, your relentless pursuit of Lee Min-sung, all of it just to find me. The chilling mockery in his words cut through the heavy atmosphere. As Suho stood stunned, the apostle spread his luminous yellow wings, exuding a terrifying, godlike presence. And to think, the apostle continued, his tone both amused and menacing, I've been wanting to meet you too, Black Mask. The disruptor. His glowing eyes locked on Suho as he leaned forward slightly. Now, he sneered, let's have some fun. We got plenty more where that came from. Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for even more amazing content.